Great. So we are live. Thanks a lot for coming along, guys. Appreciate you being here. First of all, a huge thank you to Chris for coming along. So Chris has been someone I've known in the industry for a long time now, really. And Chris is the co-founder and director of In Play Sports, and previously, I'm sure he'll say many moons ago now, was an analyst in his own right, in a couple of different settings as well. So, Chris, thanks a lot for coming along. Do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Liam. So yeah, as I'm seeing the people that's kind of joined in for the live, I know I'm already connected to a lot of you guys on LinkedIn, which is great. So for those that don't know, like Liam said, I was an analyst back in the day. So I've worked in football for a couple of clubs. So I started firstly interning at Sheffield United, and then I spent a season with Brighton Hove Albion. So I've done academy analysis, recruitment analysis, and first team analysis, and then now I spend my time running In Play Sports. So we're still involved in sport. We still hire analysts. I do that, and obviously, I'm sure some of you may have seen as well the podcast that I do, where I speak to people that are working in sport, which is highly linked to the conversation we're going to have today, Liam. And obviously, Liam is the only person that has actually been on the pod twice.
Yeah,
So
we need to make it a
shout
hat
out to
trick,
Liam.
definitely in course.
We
We've
do.
got some guys who are tuning in already. So Xander and Lucas, thanks a lot for commenting. If you are watching this live, we do want interaction. We want your questions, your thoughts, your experiences. So please do put them in the comments for this session. And to start off, put in there and let us know where you're watching. And Rayan, yes, this is recorded. It will stay on LinkedIn, and I'm sure certainly Chris will want him to be repurposing some of this great content, hopefully, and I plan on doing the same. So yeah, this is recorded. So yeah, if you are watching this, please let us know where you're tuning in from. It'd be great to see. So I guess as a starting point, and people have to bear with me because this is my first LinkedIn live. I will share my screen hopefully, and we will come along to seven mistakes. I've prepared a few slides. Chris, can you see this? Yeah, cool. I'm checking that. I'm checking that.
Yeah, I
So
can
we're
see
all
that.
good.
Yeah.
So the idea of this is really to go through seven mistakes people make when transitioning into football, and I've been on that journey myself. Chris has been on the other side of that, transitioning out but into another role. But he's really learnt from some of the best in the industry that are in some incredibly senior and great roles in the game. So we want to run through some of these. So I guess as a starting point, Chris, I guess I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this. Why, the purpose of why and why you want to work in football. Now, this might not be one that's hugely relevant to some of your guests, but I guess something you might have experience in with leaving the club side of the game, but still wanted to be in football.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've had people on the pod which have done both. So they've transitioned in and they've also transitioned out, and some have transitioned back in after they've left as well. So there's lots of different variations. I think for a lot of people that maybe tune in today in terms of they're wanting to obviously transition into the game, I think you've kind of described a little bit there with the text on the slides, Liam, in terms of, there's a lot of people out there that want to work in football. Obviously, that's why the courses at university are so popular. There's so many more degrees now than they were. So if you're obviously outside of the game and let's say you're working in a totally different sector, you're kind of starting a little bit, you could say, behind them people. So you've got people that are going to uni for, several years, doing a master's, etc., and they're getting the job that you want to kind of move into. So that's the difficulty there. But I think for me, it's which I'm sure you probably will agree, Liam, it's kind of more than just wanting to work in football because it's a nice idea. Everyone kind of loves football. That's not really it's not. I would say that's the baseline rather than the differentiator. It's not going to make you stand out just because you like the game. I think for me it comes down definitely to the clarity in terms of what you actually want, and the role that you want. Are you actually certain of what that role actually is? What does that role entail? Because which we will come on to as we go through these slides. There's lots of different roles in football, and we'll touch upon whether that's within the club setting or not. Because again, you know more than anyone, Liam, excuse me, that there's lots of different options with the different roles you can have. So I think for me, it's the clarity and kind of nailing down, just kind of taking a minute just to say, okay, what role do you actually want, and what is that role, and why do you want it? What do you like about the role that you feel like you would succeed in that? And I think that comes from speaking to other people that are maybe in those roles that you want to transition to, and again, just kind of better understand what skills are required for that particular role. And you may have a lot of them skills now that you're just applying in a different setting. You might be working in finance, for example, that a lot of them skills are definitely transferable. And obviously we're going to kind of get onto a lot of the kind of how to transfer those skills to apply into the actual game. But I mean, I was really curious to ask you really, Liam, because obviously I'm sure you've shared your story before as well in terms of you worked in the betting industry. So when you kind of got to the decision of you want to work in football, I know you were obviously sharing work online, which we will come to, but what was your thought process, and kind of how did you get clear on what you actually
But
wanted?
for me, I think it started off by being an incredibly bang average football player, and bang average is probably a compliment. I at the time, the roles that were in football were incredibly unclear to me. Now I was a like an 16, 17-year old wants to just be in football and just naturally assumed that coaching was the best and really one of the only pathways in. So I specialised down that route, did a sports coaching degree, but actually throughout my degree specialised down more of an analysis route. And again, now this is 10, 12 years ago. At the time, there was only really performance analysis available, and you'll know from being around it at that period, that was really the trodden pathway that you could go on down the analysis route. And for me, it wasn't something I hugely enjoyed. And after my time at Sky Bet, the reason I mean wanted to get out of the gambling industry and move back into football was one, try and actually put my degree to use and be involved in a sport I loved. And I loved my job at Sky Bet. I was very fortunate. But ultimately, this pathway and idea of recruitment analysis and scouting and using data and identifying players with data was really interesting to me, and that's where ultimately I started wanting to share my works. The reason why I wanted to do that was to actually have that impact, be part of a collective, try and influence football games and results, which ultimately I think everyone, when they're in these roles, wants to do. So I don't just think that it's clear, understand sort of why you want to work in football, but I think it's also the how, and knowing the types of roles that are available to you, as you've said, I think is a really important part of there, because as I said at the time, recruitment analysis wasn't really a thing. But sort of in the years afterwards, as more data become available and the industry matured, that's sort of where I felt like how I could have my impact would be in that role. And the reason for that was really to use my coaching knowledge, my data knowledge, and develop my scouting skills to have an impact in that area of the game. And I come back and speak to a lot of people on a weekly basis who say they want to work in football, but they don't really know what kind of roles. They just want to be in the game, and ultimately, sort of without that clarity, you're going to give up because it's going to get hard, and you don't know how to sort of progress on that journey.
Yeah, the motivation is a big thing, because not every time, but I think a lot of people, which maybe you experience this, Lee, but when people move from a different sector, a lot of the time they're moving for lower initially or no pay, to get into the game. So if you don't love it enough to be able to, push through that kind of, don't get me wrong, you can earn money working in the game, but initially when you first join, you're not going to be joining for the big bucks. So I think at the early days, having more than just a simple level of motivation, because you will give up if it's hard. And just going back to what you mentioned, Liam, in terms of the recruitment analyst role, I mean that's kind of really fits into what I did, because when at my role at Brighton, I applied for a job which was the first team analyst, and I didn't actually get that job at the time, but they offered me a recruitment analyst, and I'd never had any indication of doing recruitment analysis at that point. So it was a case of it kind of came on the back of something else, really. So I suppose it's getting the balance of having a clarity of what you want, but also being open to other opportunities, because things do open up when you do go for other things. So it's not always a straight path, which I think I've got down to speak about later, in terms of wherever you're going, you might end up diverting to be able to
And
get
I
to the
think
place
that's
you want to get to
a great
eventually.
point that I'm sure we'll come on to onto later is that there isn't a linear route into football, or certainly not in a number of different roles, but also throughout your career. I think more people are now going into different job roles within clubs or organisations, then moving to different organisations or clubs in different roles. And I think we've seen that with new different job titles coming up on a more regular basis as well. And I think that sort of leads as a nice segue into the next point around a lot of people just feel like they need certificates and need qualifications and need to add more learning to their armor. And I think there's nothing wrong with doing online courses, education, degrees, masters. I think if these things are going to help you, one, develop knowledge and a skill set that you don't already have, which is obviously why we go through education, but also two, open doors, opportunities, allow you to get experience, but also grow your network. And I think that's a really perfect combination for education. However, I think a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they see all these different courses and not quite a linear pathway into the game, and they want to do more of these courses. And actually, what they're doing is building a list of credentials that hundreds, if not thousands, of people already have and have been through those courses. So I don't know sort of where you sit on the side of I guess online courses, degrees, but also sort of how can people best progress through this sort of education sort of pathway.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I will start by saying I'm definitely not against courses. Like, courses can be great in terms of, continuing to learn. I mean, it's one of them things where the people I'm speaking to on the podcast that are in these, even the ones that are in the elite clubs, they're still going off on their own back. They're already in the role and they're already in the club, and they're still going out and learning new skills because they know they have to sharpen the skill set, because if they don't, then someone that is looking to transition into the role that is doing, all of the CPD will ultimately eventually overtake them. So I'm definitely not against courses, but I think courses they should be there to support your work and not replace it. I think a lot of people, like you said, are kind of collecting them, and they're kind of using that as an excuse potentially, and kind of hiding behind the courses rather than, you know, putting work out, which I think we're going to come on to anyway, Liam. But I think in terms of, it used to be a case of, I used to say to people, kind of, everyone's got an undergrad degree, so what do you kind of do to stand out? But it's because there's just so many people now. It's gone further than that. Like, everyone's got a degree. Most people now have got a master's. Most people are doing the same courses, like you've said. So it's not, you're not standing out by doing them. I think the way I would think about it as well is, when you're going for a role within a club, I think every hire within a club, within an organisation, or anything, any job, whether it's football or not, any hire is a risk, and it's your job as the person that's looking to get the job to kind of limit the risk for the employer. So I think for me, like, if you gave me a list of all the courses you've done, that to me doesn't lower the risk as much as you actually showing me you can do the job. So yeah, definitely not against courses, but don't rely on them as your only thing. If you've just got a list of courses, I think for me is, if you, because obviously people list them on the CV. So what I would say to them, if you had to get rid of your CV, less I'm talking to you, Liam, if your CV didn't exist, what would you have without the list of courses that you've done? So if you can, if you can actually use the course and apply what you've learned to do certain tasks and show people, then great. But if you're not doing that, then that's where I feel like the mistake is, and people are just kind of doing them
Yeah,
for the
I
sake of
completely
doing them, I
agree.
would
And
say.
I think anyone who's been to university or gone and got a degree, and I don't think you necessarily need a degree for some of the roles in football, especially around scouting. But what I would say to that is that I think when you go and do these educations and these degrees, a lot of the talk was always around what are you doing outside of your degree, and I still think that's the case with any sort of education or learning, whether that is going to conferences and events and meeting people like at Field of Play on Friday, or whether you are putting your work out there and demonstrating those skills. And I think a combination of all of these things is ultimately what you need to progress and get opportunities. So for me, for anyone who wants to work in football, I think of it as let's say about recruitment analysis and scouting for that argument's sake. I think of it as four key pillars, which are technical skills around analysis, technical skills around scouting, building your online portfolio and visibility, and ultimately increasing your employability by growing your network and getting out there and meeting more people as well. So there's sort of the four key things that I like to think about.
Yeah, just before, because I think the whole certificates and courses and stuff, I think the networking aspect of them is just as much as what you'll actually be learning. Because I think a lot of the times you might get on these courses, and yes, you might learn a few things, but you might not learn, everything. You might already know some of the things, but it's the opportunities that you have in meeting other people that are on those courses and meeting them, and that leads to other things. So yeah, I think that the networking aspect is probably just as important as the actual learning of what's being taught on a particular course, especially universities and things like that, because that's where you make your connections early on, and they can stick with you throughout a 20-30 year career in sports. Definitely,
No, I
that would be
completely
an important one for
completely
me.
agree with that. Just before we pass over to the next one, which is a nice segue from what we've been coming into around your public visibility, we've got a number of people who are kindly commenting, sharing some thoughts, and also sharing where they're from, which is great. Suzanne has been incredibly active. Thanks a lot for a lot of the context in there. He sort of says a point that you made earlier on around football not necessarily being a moneymaker and it being a job passion, and he was thinking about doing some other courses, but mainly to build connections, as you've said there. And he also comes on to talk about putting yourself out there, showing your work, and that's a nice segue into sort of what we're putting. And as we're going through, guys, if you have any questions on anything we're going through, please do put them in the comments. And at the time, we've got a dedicated 15, 20 minutes, depending on time for us to go through Q&A. So please do put in your questions and keep your questions for the end. We want to go through them. Now, I'm pretty sure this is one that a lot of your guests on your podcast have spoke a lot about in recent years, certainly, Chris, around sort of public visibility, building in public, showing their work. So I guess what's been the sort of key takeaway from the experts that you spoke to around this, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, definitely. I think you may have said it on the pod we did, Liam. In terms of just getting started, I think I definitely understand where people get the apprehension initially, because it can be quite overwhelming when you are, if you go onto LinkedIn and say Twitter or X or whatever, and you're seeing these amazing pieces of work, and you're just starting out, you're thinking, well, I can't post anything half as good as what Liam's doing. But then, I'm forgetting that, well, Liam's been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years. He started at one point, and if I look back at some of your early stuff, I'm sure you'll agree that it's probably terrible compared to what you're putting out now. So you have to start somewhere, and I think for me as well, like that's how you learn, because the community is good. Don't get me wrong, I'm not ingrained in it as much as some people are, but when people put things out and they ask for feedback, and then other people that are on the kind of same journey will comment on, and kind of give them tips, maybe ask a question. I know you do that. I see, you commented on a lot of people's work that they're posting, Liam, and giving them tips and stuff. I think some people think that, putting work out there is kind of just all about self promotion, but it's not that. It's like, it's kind of learning in public. And I think we are going to come on to kind of wait until you're ready and stuff like that. But I think for me, this resonates to me in terms of my YouTube channel. So when I started the podcast or the YouTube channel, it was a case of, I had thoughts of, well, why would anyone want to listen to me? Why is anyone going to watch these videos? But then I just kind of took a step back and thought, well, I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. Like, I'm doing it to connect with other people. I'm having conversations with other analysts in the industry. And, would I do it if nobody viewed it? I genuinely would, because I'm getting, a lot of value out of having them conversations. And I think you've kind of got to think of that, because when you first start, the chances are, if you are putting work out there, yeah, it's not going to get thousands and thousands of views. You just face the facts. When you start out, you might not get many views at all, but it's just about kind of building the consistency just to keep going. And you can obviously speak definitely on this, Liam, because you've been putting some great work out for many years now, but just kind of building the consistency over time. And if you can then just think, okay, well, I put this out last week, I'm just going to think of one thing to improve for my next week's post, just one thing. And if you do that, and then if you do that again the next week and the next week, after a year, you've improved 52 separate things, and you've gone from a terrible bang average report to something that's really fine tuned and kind of upgraded from your own learnings, but also what people are kind of commenting and sharing with you. So, but I think you're definitely more more inclined to speak on this, Liam, because you did exactly this, and I think you probably got your job on the back of
Yeah,
posting the work that you
like
did.
most of my opportunities in football have come from people being aware of me, my knowledge, and my skill set for the multiple years that I was sharing stuff online. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Really, about it's about putting stuff out there, even when you don't necessarily feel like it's fully ready. And I like to go through people who struggle with this and say we're here to reframe the mindset of why we're sharing our work online. As you said, it's not to go viral, it's not to become famous. It's actually for two things, and that is one, to get feedback on our work. Without that feedback, you're not going to develop, and if you don't share your work in front of people, you won't get feedback. And then secondly, it's about growing that network. And I think of it with two different types of people. So you've got peers, so people who are already on that journey with you, people who also want to work in football or change their career or become an analyst or a scout, whatever the jobs are, because they're great people to ask questions from, learn with, take inspiration from their work. Again, we're talking 5, 6 years ago now, but if people hadn't have helped me in terms of where to get data, like I'd never heard of Tableau, I couldn't code, I didn't know where to get data, I didn't know how to get started, and without people who were already doing that, I wouldn't have got started because I had to ask them questions. And then also with industry experts, so people who are already in the game, people can give you really quality, detailed feedback or mentorship or advice. So that's the reason why we're sharing our work, is not to go viral or to go, to get famous, but the two reasons, and that's feedback and visibility, as well as sort of building your network. And ultimately, without those things, I wouldn't be where I am today in football, to be honest. We've got some great questions, which we can run through a couple now. So Ryan Davies asks, and you might be a good to answer this, is what are your thoughts on people with military training background transitioning into football? Do you think there might be any assets or skills that they can bring? Do you have any thoughts on that one, Chris?
I've never hired anyone from military background, but I'm sure it wouldn't be a bad thing. I think you obviously learn a lot of skills in that kind of industry, and I think in terms of that discipline and kind of consistency, I, I mean it's a hard one for me. I don't know
So
if do you have
again,
any thoughts on
I
that,
think it
Liam?
depends
I'm
on
not
the
actually
kind of
sure, to be
military
honest.
role in particular, but there are going to be key transferable skills. Working under pressure, communication is going to be a huge one. Again, it depends what kind of roles you're going for in football as well. But I can guarantee that you're going to have some serious transferable skills around that people side, the communication. And ultimately, for me, that's the biggest area where
Definitely.
people can get opportunities in football now is through that communication. Technical skills are easier than ever to develop, and I think for me, that communication and personal side of the game is something that, from a military background, I think you would definitely bring. Paddy, who I'm sure we both and everyone knows from his LinkedIn, has said it's not always about your portfolio, but also about sort of the languages that you can speak and your communication and the way you come across. Again, that links in with that point, and I completely agree with it. But keep your questions coming, guys. We'll definitely get to them, and we'll have a dedicated time for Q&A at the end as well. So I know this is one you mentioned briefly a little bit earlier, Chris, around sort of people waiting until they're ready. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think again, not to repeat myself, but going back to the my kind of experience in this would be the YouTube channel. I definitely wasn't ready. I didn't even have a camera or a microphone or anything, and I just thought, well, I might as well just try and do it because at least if you start, you can iterate from there. If you never start, then you never got anything to kind of improve upon, really. But yeah, I think people. This is not just obviously the posting online. Like people obviously wait until they're ready for that, but it's not just that. It's around kind of going out and trying to volunteer or networking, sending messages and things like that. I think the key for me is you'll never actually be ready. Like you'll always convince yourself that there's something else you can do before you start, or yeah, I'm not quite doing this. I'll maybe post when I learn this new skill or when I do this. But yeah, I think the key for me is just kind of get started because you never will be ready. It's one of them where the further you go on the journey, the more you learn, the more you realize that you actually don't know anyway. So if you would have just kept waiting until you've learned everything, which is never going to happen, but I do understand it. I think there's going back to that kind of fear of rejection kind of thing, and you don't want to look stupid. Maybe you're not in the industry, you're trying to get in. You're almost kind of seen as an outsider, but I think you don't get anything if you don't ask for things. So yeah, I think you've just got to be a bit more forceful and a bit more ruthless in terms of kind of, if you want something, you've got to try and go out, and no one's going to give you a job if you don't kind of go out and look for it and ask for it. So
Yeah, no, I agree
yeah,
with that, and I think
any thoughts on
it's
that
about
one?
pulling at the thread of what is it that's stopping you from taking that next step, whether it's sharing that work, applying for the job, doing the course, reaching out to a connection, whatever it is that you're not doing or that you're waiting to do. When I have calls with people, which do on a weekly basis, is what what is the thing that you are putting off or that you're stopping, and you'll once you pull at that thread a little bit further, you'll quite often realize that it will come back to a faulty belief around not feeling like your work is good enough, a fear of rejection, um, a worry that someone might, criticize your work, whatever it is. Like, people have a lot of faulty beliefs around sort of good taking that next step. And I think it's about realizing sort of why you're doing these things, and reframing them, as I said earlier, especially if it's sharing that work online. What is the reason why we are doing this? And ultimately, what is the worst that can happen from that? So yeah, from my side, the best thing you can do is take more shots, and that's something I learned from the book, Show Your Work by Austin Kleon, which I highly recommend. Is we need to take more shots. Obviously, it's quite ironic given we're talking about football, but the more shots and goals you have, the more people you reach out to, the more work you put out there, the more things you do to progress on your journey, the sort of bigger percentage chance you'll have of having a positive outcome from that as well. So that's sort of where I think about sort of that side of things. Um, Now, we mentioned earlier, everyone's journey in the game is completely different. Now, my journey from starting to share work online, to getting full time in the football industry probably took 18 months to 2 years, give or take. Um, However, there's been people in the recruitment room who I work with on a one-to-one basis with, that it's taken them 6 months. So everyone's journey and timeline is different, and it comes back to um, the career you're moving from, your previous experience, the network you already have. But I think a lot of people want to change their job overnight or get an opportunity in football sort of overnight. And I think the reality around that is that these things take time to nurture. They take time to compound, especially when it comes to relationships, network skills you're developing, your online visibility. Um, there's no sort of black box for doing this one thing and getting an outcome from it straight away. Um, I guess sort of what did your journey look like, Chris? Because you went on more of a sort of traditional pathway into the game. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to link it back to that traditional pathway of, say, a sports degree of some sort. I mean, if you are outside the game trying to get in, you kind of, for me at least, you would have to compare it to that traditional one. I mean, if someone is going the traditional route, even that's going to take 3 years to do an undergrad degree, maybe a master's, maybe, so it's going to take years to go the typical route anyway. So a career in football, you might have a career 20, 25 years. So to me at least, if it takes 2 years to make the transition, that's a small. It's not a long time. You know what I mean? Like if people are going to uni and doing all these kind of degrees for 3 years, and you can make a transition out of a different sector into football, and it's going to take 1 to 2 years. I think people do kind of maybe do expect it to happen sooner and maybe too soon. But yeah, I think that's what I would think about. But also, I think we touched on it earlier, Liam, in terms of this rarely is a straight line. I think a lot of people. I mean, I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, which I'm sure you do, in terms of people will say that they're working in a particular sector and they want to be an analyst, and maybe their long-term goal is to work, let's say, for a Premier League football club. I think, be realistic, they're probably not going to move directly to that Premier League football club, just because of the competition, and they're going from outside, and they've probably got less of a network within the football industry. So for me, it would be kind of trying to plot out a plan, to be able to get there. And it might be that you have to take, a step sideways here, and then you maybe go towards a data company or something that's it might not be the end goal, but it's going to get you closer to the end goal, I would say. So in terms of, you're not going to go from one role outside of football to your dream job, definitely not. But you can kind of plot a route there and kind of plan that. And I think that's probably something that is underrated, in my opinion, in terms of trying to have a plan for your career. Like, it's your life, it's your career. If what do you want to do? What do you want to work as? And just, unless you kind of, I like to write things down, make lists, etc. Unless you're doing that and you're not actually forging a plan, you're not going to actually make any progress with it, in my opinion.
That next point of actually putting that plan and putting it into practice, and it's not 100% relatable. But I know Tennyson, who does a lot more career advice for football coaches, for example. He talks about their sort of 8-10 year plan, and on that he sort of diagrams, and it's not a linear path. Like, you might be in the Academy one moment, then go into under 14s, but then you might take a slightly more senior job at another younger level, or to make progress later on in the career. And I think that's the same as you said there, whether and there are more opportunities opening up in different roles in football that we're going to come back to, is that whether that is at various different organisations. You don't have to take a necessarily linear route to this, but definitely expect it to take, especially in terms of a career transition, 1 to 2 years as a minimum, really. Now, go on, man.
Sorry, I know you've jumped on. I just want to ask you a question, really, in terms of, and it links to the point of expecting it to happen too fast, but also posting online. What would you say to someone, Liam, that is, maybe they are, a year and a bit in, and they've been posting quite regularly, and they feel like they're not getting the traction they want? Because I'm sure there's probably are people out there that are in that situation, and maybe they're starting to feel like they might want to give up, or is it worth it? Is it kind of, all this time I'm putting in, worth it? What would you say? I'm sure you've got people like that you speak to regularly, and so do you have any kind of words of wisdom on
I think
that?
the landscape is a little bit different, and I would be foolish to not acknowledge that more people are sharing their work online now. So it is a little bit harder to cut through that noise if you are sharing work semi-regularly. I think then the next point for me is then, are we getting quality feedback for you to develop on your work? And secondly is about that network side. So I go through with a lot of the members of the recruitment room and say to them, okay, well, you put some great work out there, you've got a little bit of feedback. What are we doing then next? Are we just putting that work out there and sort of sitting back? Because for me, with that work, a great opportunity is really to be reaching out to the people who are viewing your profile on LinkedIn, engaging with the work, commenting or sharing it, or following you. All of these people are giving you a warm sign, a warm signal to reach out to and connect with them. Found interest in your work, they like what you do, or they've given you feedback, whatever that is. And I think for me, once you've been sharing that work, which is one part of it, it's about how can we grow that network in football, whether that is going to events. And if you're able to do that, great. If not, you're putting stuff out there and people are giving you permission to reach out to them because they're engaging with you and your profile and your work. So it's not about bombarding everyone and sending a mass message to everyone. It's about actually trying to be personalized. Do you have a common ground, a common connection with that person? And yes, you do, because they would likely see your work or been sort of engaged with it or like your profile. And I think from then it's about opening up just a conversation and not asking for anything. But I think from there, those networking opportunities can then lead to opportunities in of themselves. So that's my biggest advice. If you are sharing the work, which is a big part, we need to then go one step further and actually really make sure we're making the most of that as well.
Yeah. Just to add to that, sorry, Dim, I know we're kind of going through the slides, but just in terms of not kind of getting to the point where you are just going through the motions and kind of almost like coasting through, just putting the work out. Do you know what I mean? What you actually do, it goes back to what you're doing it for. But yeah, rather than just, okay, hit post, oh, I've got that work out this week, that's all. But was that work actually worth, did you actually spend time in it? Did you learn anything from that work? Did you improve anything from the last time you put it out? Rather than just becoming stale. And I suppose that's when you start to feel a bit stagnant, whether you think, okay, is it worth it? But obviously, like you said, it links to the reaching out side of the thing. You're not just putting content out just to be seen and that's it. never speak to anyone, because then you're in your kind of
Absolutely.
own echo chamber at that point. So yeah, you answered it well.
And
That's
again,
spot on.
we've definitely got loads of questions, and we'll come to them in the Q&A. So please do keep them coming. We've only got a couple more to get through, and we've got then dedicated time to go through with you guys. So thank you for the questions. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, is actually exploring what roles exist in the football industry now. Most people have an idea that they want to work for the club they support. They want to work for Arsenal or Man United or Liverpool, whoever it is, and that is a great dream to have. I'm not saying like you shouldn't want to work for clubs, because that's where ultimately a lot of people want to have impact, win games and trophies, work for the club they support, etc. But I would always ask people to look beyond that as well. There are more opportunities than ever before in different industries in football, certainly in recruitment analysis, data, scouting, talent ID, and like for me at the moment, I've gone from the club side and I'm now working at a global football agency. I've also got a very good relationship with the guys at 12 Football, for example. So I'm very familiar with how data companies work in the game. And actually, there are more sort of bigger consultancies, but also independent advisory work that happens now with people as well. So this links into there being more opportunities in the game, and don't just be focused on club roles, but also in all of these other different organizations, there's more chance for remote work and hybrid work, and also more opportunities than before. So don't just limit yourself to these club roles. If you actually broaden your horizons, there's more ways you can have an impact and get into the industry as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think the clubs kind of, even if that's the main goal, that might be kind of the front doorway in, but there's many kind of other side doors to get into the industry, I would say. And what I do also say to people as well is, I know everyone might want to ultimately end up in football, but I wouldn't turn my nose up at, roles outside it. There might be some analyst roles with, athletics, UK athletics or Institute of Sport. If you can then show that you can apply your skill set, which you honed outside of sport in the sport setting, that will then be even more closely transferable to football if you still want to get into football after that. So, yeah, don't kind of shut down these opportunities, because they can definitely, lead to things. And linked to what you mentioned, and very similar to your role, Liam, my thought went to Mike Still, who was on my pod. He was an analyst for many years, and he also works in the agency setting now, in terms of with agents and that kind of thing. So, and he described it as being, it's still very similar. It's similar enough for him to feel comfortable in the fact that he knows his skill set is, but there's also that element of difference as well. It's more like the business setting rather than the club setting, the team around the players, etc. as much. So, yeah, it was interesting to hear that from someone that has worked in both, especially in the club setting for so long, and now moved into the agency. But yeah, I mean, again, without going back to the pod every time, but I've had lots of people that have done the same. Like, they've gone from the actual industry in terms of working in the club, and they've gone out to work for an external company, or they've gone out to work for a university, for example, and all of these, the skills in each different type of role, you will pick up different skills. So if what you learn in a agency will definitely be transferable, but you'll pick up things in an agency that you might necessarily not have picked up as well in the club setting or in the data company setting. So if you can kind of pull things from different areas, then you will become a more rounded analyst and more valuable at the end of the day to whichever organization you
No,
do
I
actually
agree.
ultimately end up at.
The person that come to mind for me was Todd Warville, who, as people may or may not know, has come from a traditional degree background in, I think it was maths, or economics, can't remember which one it was, and has then gone on to work. Well, I can't remember the order of them, but basically worked at a data company, then and then a club role, then a media company, and now working at a multi-club ownership group or consortium that owns multiple football clubs. And that just shows you that, even when you're inside the game, that there are different avenues and routes where you can build and develop your skill sets. And as I said earlier, I think there's more people in club roles that have got great experience from agencies or consultancies or data companies. So yeah, there's more opportunity than ever before. Just don't sort of limit yourself to two roles at football clubs, is what I would say to that. And then finally, number seven, I think this is a big thing that I come to earlier around the peers side of the network that you need to develop are the peers who can help you along that journey. I think especially if you're wanting to transition career and don't know where to get started, or perhaps don't have a great network in football, I think it's easy to feel a bit isolated because your friendship group or your family or whoever it is don't really sort of get why you would want to change career or pursue that job in football other than it being a cool job to have. And I think it's easy to try and do this on your own without that network or that support of people behind you. And again, here I mentioned about support, accountability, and community. And I think that is a really great way of putting it around. Um, if you're trying to do it alone, these are the things that you're going to miss out. And ultimately, if you don't have people that are there who can understand you and what you're going through and give you advice, if um, if you don't have people that are there that's going to say, like I said to a couple of our members when I saw them at the Field of Play event on Friday, is why are you not posting more? I'm not seeing enough of your work online. People to keep you going when that motivation dips, and then ultimately having people on that same path. I think it can just be a harder journey to go on and either take longer or equally make people want to stop as well. So I think not going alone on this journey, I think, is a really big part. And for me, again, referring back to my own journey, without this community, then again, I probably wouldn't be where I am today either.
Yeah, the accountability definitely is a key one for me. And I think if I was, I'm obviously not, but if I was looking to transition into a role into football, I would try to, find these people and connect with people that they've done it. They've actually gone through the process. So you mentioned, like, for example, Tom Warville. There's many people out there that have done a similar path. Obviously, you being one of them. Like, learn from the people that have actually done it, and what, you might be able to take a little thing from one person, a little thing from another person. It kind of, one, it will give you inspiration that it is possible, but you can actually learn from them situations as well. But when it comes to networking, I will say, I think networking is so. When I say networking, I'm going to focus initially on the actual, like, the outreach to people, so messaging people on LinkedIn, for example, because I do get a lot of messages on there, and it's quite clear to me, at least, that people, a lot of people, don't know how to send a good message or an initial message. So it goes without saying, don't use AI to type your message to me, because it's quite clear a lot of the time. And it can, I mean, you're probably the same, Liam. I mean, I get people asking me for jobs all the time, and the first message is, have you got any jobs? Or, and it's
I
just
think
like,
on
well,
on
no, I
that, I think
haven't.
it's about
Like,
making it
so, like,
like
what?
make it easy for people to get back to you and give you some insight or information. I think whether it's an AI message, whether it is asking for something straight away, these things just really make it easy for people who are very time poor or very, or have got other priorities to just not reply to you, to blank you, or to either just send you, like a don't message me message, or don't sort of, it's a no from me, a sort of cold hard end of the conversation. So really make it easy for people to get back to you. And again, it comes back to the point I made earlier about if you have a common ground, someone you know between you already, you know something about the person. All of these things just make it really easy to give a personalized message, to have a warm outreach, and already have that common ground there to establish that conversation. I think that is huge.
Yeah, I think just going back to what the point you made about the different types of people in your network, Liam, like the peers, the mentors, etc. Because I think, well, at least when people are starting out, like, they think, well, I want to work as a scout, so I'm just going to message all heads of recruitment. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to message all these top people that are at the top of the game, and you're going to get less responses from those people. So, it is about connecting with a whole range of people, and yes, not always being on the ask. Like, offer them something, maybe share an insight that you've seen from some work that they posted, or maybe ask their opinion on something, or, like I say, be specific, and exactly what you said, make it easy for someone to actually answer, rather than just, a whole paragraph of so many questions that it isn't clear
Yeah,
what you're actually
100%,
wanting,
100%. I couldn't
basically.
agree more. And I guess just to summarize some of the stuff we've been through is like a transition progression in football is completely possible, but it takes time. It takes the right approach. So if you can get clear on your why do you want to be in the game, what's your skill set, what kind of roles do you want, showing your work and being visible in public and not just chasing certificates, having that online visibility, starting before you feel ready. Again, it's a process, it takes time. There are more options in the industry than just working for a club and ultimately trying to find your people who are one step ahead of you, one step behind you in your position, as well as industry experts. I think is such a crucial thing to help with your journey. So hopefully that helps, and that gives us a great amount of time, 10, 15 minutes to go through some Q&A. And I know we've been absolutely inundated in the chat here. So let me just scroll back up and we can go through some of these. So Mark asks, in your opinion, can a portfolio of work, e.g., a Google Drive, link with pre-match, post-match, major and internship? Does that work for employers? So from my side, yes, having a drive or a document with some of your work, I think, is a great thing to have and share with employers when you're going for jobs. But in terms of your visibility, I always think that your work should be on a social platform that has some sort of distribution through an algorithm. And the reason for that is that you want people who are interested in your work to find you. And if it's in a Google Drive, on your website, in a blog post, not many people are going to see that work unless you already either have a big following or you link it to them. So from my point of view, I always say have that sort of backlog, the base for your work, and have it there if you need it. But we really want to be showing your work on a public platform, whether that is LinkedIn, Twitter, Substack has an algorithm. That's always my best advice. We want people to discover you if they are interested in that kind of work, and you don't want it to be hidden away. With that, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Chris.
No, I exactly agree. I mean, you're better to answer that than me, Liam. I
Excellent,
agree with
excellent.
everything you said,
So
mate.
Anthony comes through and asks, what can you do when you contact analysts, scouts, and clubs and volunteer or shadowing opportunities, and you don't get any replies? Chris, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I think the first thing is don't take it personally. Don't take it to heart. I mean, obviously, my day job now is I'm in sales. I get a lot of no's. That you just got to carry. You just got to carry on. To be honest, yeah. I mean, maybe what you could do is you could ask other people that are in your situation. Maybe for example, if they were in the recruitment room, Liam, with you, I'm sure you would be able to look over the message that are being sent and maybe can we tweak the messages that are going out. Maybe the reason you're not getting replies is because the messages are just not landing or they're not effective. So I definitely check on that and maybe try and change up what you're sending in the messages. So if you've sent 100 messages, you've not got a single one, to me that would mean, well, maybe the messaging is not landing. So maybe we can, and just experiment. Obviously, you're not going to run out of people to contact and message, and you can always message someone again if you've sent them a message. It doesn't mean that 6 months later you can't drop them another message to check in or whatever. Like, it's not that person is out of bounds now unless they physically tell you not to message them again. So yeah, don't take it to heart. Maybe work on the messaging that is actually going out, and that can come from you. It can come from other people within your network. And yeah, just keep going. Don't be disheartened, I would say, because when you are starting out, it is hard, and you will get ignored more than you get
Yeah,
replies.
and I
We've
agree.
all
And
we've all been
I
there.
can see, Anthony, you followed up by saying, you don't even ask directly. You are trying to build relationships beforehand. Like for me, that's like the best thing you can do, is keep doing that. We want to build a connection or a common ground and establish that connection before we ask for anything. If the first or second time you're messaging someone is to ask for something, then I think we're doing the networking wrong. We need to be doing this further ahead of time. And as I mentioned earlier, if you can have a common ground, whether that is they've engaged in your piece of work or they've recently followed you or they've connected with you on LinkedIn, whatever that is, I think building that common ground gives you something to talk about and nurture and start that relationship. Lewis asks, do you find there's a demand or interest from locals or semi-pro clubs to engage with people starting out on a voluntary basis. So I guess, do you believe there's still demand at that sort of lower level of the game?
100%, 100%. I mean, if you're going to go down to your local club and offer to help them, maybe do some clips or do something that they're going to benefit from for the next game, like they're not going to say, unless you're just not a engaging person. But like if you're polite, you're willing to help and you're keen to show that you have skills that are going to benefit the team. Definitely, I think that the rise in all of the automated cameras, like there's more and more teams, especially the grassroots teams, that are filming the games and they don't do anything with the video. So that's just means that there's more opportunities out there to be able to get hold of that video and actually do work. And if nothing comes of it, even if you do it and the club isn't actually engaging, it's more content for you that you've created for your own portfolio. You've had a go, you've had had that experience working within a club. But to answer the question, I think there's definitely still a appetite, and whether that's a grassroots club, whether you're at uni. I say this all the time, like the universities compete on a Wednesday, the Bucks League, and some of them are a really kind of high standard as well. So you can definitely get involved in those kind of positions. But yeah, I don't know if
No, I think it
if
makes
you want to
complete
add to that,
sense.
Liam.
Now, I think the opportunity, more performance analysis probably than anything. There is opportunity to do it on the side, even if it is volunteering to go out and watch games and opposition analysis as well as scouting. My advice would just be to reach out to people and see and try and establish a connection what they already have in place, and also get connected with people in heads of recruitment, sporting director roles at these lower level clubs if they are on LinkedIn, which I think more are nowadays as well, as they'll be the ones who are posting opportunities.
Yeah, I think with that as well, to me, is if you're going to go into a club like that as well, that's where the relationship with the coaching staff matters, because a lot of analysts might want to, they might be keen to show off their skills and do certain analysis which is not actually wanted by the coach, or they're not going to actually implement that. So for me, it would be a case of having that conversation with the coach and saying, well, what is there a problem that you're struggling with right now, or is there something that you would like to know from the data, and then actually go away and do that. And if the coach then, if you've got that rapport with the coach, and they know actually this person that's coming in, they are actually really useful. They've helped me out in X, Y, and Z, rather than just doing stuff for the sake of it. I would say definitely like understand the why you're doing it, and is it worthwhile to you, but
Yeah,
also to the
yeah,
team
that
that you're
makes
actually
sense.
working with.
And Lucas, with a bit more of a niche question here, which I will take, but forgive me if I'm wrong. He sort of says he's working as a part-time agent, but his LinkedIn only allows one profile, obviously for you and yourself. And it sounds like he's having difficulties in trying to break through with seeing a lot of people in his sort of day job as an IT consultant versus the football side of games. So when I speak to people who use LinkedIn for their day jobs who want to get into football, my advice is try and create a separate account, whether that is a different email. I know obviously LinkedIn only wants you to have one account, but there are ways around creating a separate account for your football and for your day job, and that's what I would encourage. Equally, if you want to use one LinkedIn profile for it, you can start to customize your feed and your timeline by unfollowing people. That doesn't mean you have to remove a connection. You can unfollow them, and that also then updates your algorithm to be showing more of content towards the football side of things. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, very niche one there. Louise, who's actually a member of the recruitment room, so thanks a lot, Louise, for coming along. Um, Says, is having a football coaching license important to increase chances of getting roles in the industry of recruitment analysis scouting? I guess, do you have any thoughts on that, Chris?
It's a good question, because it's a question I ask pretty much everyone that comes on the pod, and I think it definitely, in my opinion, it depends on what type of role you want. I mean, if you want to be like a data analyst, you don't need to be able to coach. I think the analyst role that I had back in the day, in terms of that first team performance analyst, that is becoming a lot more blurred with the coaching role. So I think that a coaching background would help. But again, it's not necessary, I don't think. I mean, just recently, the conversation I had with, say, Paul and Tom, that have both been Man United analysts for several years, neither of them initially had a coaching badge. It's the fact that they're learning from the elite coaches that are in those settings. So I would say it's not definitely needed, but I think it does depend heavily on what type of role you want. If it's more the performance analyst, like that old type, I think it would definitely be more valuable than if you want to be a data analyst or a scout. I think, I don't know. In terms of scout, obviously you're definitely more of a scout than me, Liam.
Yeah,
So I
so
don't
my,
know what you
my
think
obviously
on the
background
scouting
in
side.
sports coaching anyway. I think that we are starting to see more analysts and just job descriptions in general say like it is preferred or desirable if people have coaching degrees experience. And I think that's just a great way of demonstrating that you have a technical, tactical understanding and knowledge of the game because you've gone through a coaching education, which just ultimately gives more evidence to say, you understand the game at a deeper level. So whether that is from a scouting, recruitment analyst, or performance analyst point of view, I think it helps. As you said, I think if you are more performance analysis route, it's definitely probably a better pathway to go down and getting that coaching experience than the recruitment side of the game. But nevertheless, I think it's a great string to have in your bow when it comes to going for jobs in football.
It goes back to the point we had earlier on in the slides as well, in like doing courses for the sake of it. Is it actually going to, propel you to the direction you want to go in? But yeah, definitely, I'm not saying you don't need one, but it's not required.
Yeah,
It
I
depends. There's
completely
nuance to it, I would
completely
say.
agree with that. Where are we? Montre saying Wall was a great shout, did a fantastic job at Leipzig Athletic. Yeah, Chris has done a great podcast with Tom, right?
Yeah, Tom's been on the pod. Yeah, Tom's is a good one. Definitely check that out. And if you've not watched it, it was
Yeah,
Tom's
Tom's a great
brilliant.
guy. It's great to see him go into another role in the game. Um, Louise thanks us for sharing sort of words around it, um, which is great. He comes back with a couple of questions as well. First thing being sort of what your thoughts on entry level opportunities and asking for more experience than of entry level. It's a great point, and I think that is the football industry overall. I can't remember if I shared it or I wrote about it last week around sort of going for a job in football, and a job description is not a it's not a checklist. Like you don't have to hit all of the criteria when it comes to going for a job in football. And I think football industry, not just clubs, but football industry as a whole, they want more from candidates all the time. So don't feel like you have to meet all the criteria in terms of number of years of experience or specific courses and things like that. Obviously, you need to hit a reasonable amount of them and be a valuable candidate, but yeah, don't feel like you need to hit all of them. But I would agree, looking at job descriptions, certainly for more analysis kind of roles, you'll see a data analyst or recruitment analyst job description, and they want you to be an expert at coding. They want you to know SQL. They want you to be able to database and use SQL. And I think that speaks more volumes around the club and the lack of clarity that they know that they want versus sort of the people that are going for those roles. But Chris, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I agree in terms of definitely, if you check 9 out of 10 points, it doesn't mean you're not, good enough. But I think another thing I would say on that is, and it's kind of changing the subject a little bit, going back to the kind of networking side. But from me, just the hundreds of people I've spoke to that work in the game, the roles that are advertised and the job descriptions, the chances are the majority of people that are applying can actually do every single one of them things anyway. Like it's not, the job of an analyst isn't it's not a rocket scientist. Like a lot of people can do it, but it's in terms of demonstrating that skill, but also the people that I have and I speak to on the podcast, pretty much everyone, they got their job because they connected with someone when they were on an internship, or they connected with someone when they're on a course, and then that led to meeting somebody else. So it's a very personable industry, and that's how you're going to get your opportunities. Like I've said it before. Like if you could be the best analyst in the world, but if you don't have a network, if you're not speaking to anyone, you're never going to get a job in football. So yeah,
So,
definitely
and
don't
the
sleep
second
on
part of
that
this
side.
question is a great question. Was there a moment that you took action to be a part of the football world or progress on your journey in the game? And this might come from maybe the business side as well for you, where you got discouraged and unmotivated and said, "Man, this I don't think is working." Have you had one of those moments, Chris?
I think we've all had them moments, haven't we? Like we all in anything in life. Yeah, I mean, most people that work in football now have got, especially the ones that are at my age, have probably done a stint of unpaid work, which I've done that. And when you're outside in January filming an academy game and it's freezing and you're not getting paid for it. It's like, what am I doing? Like, do I even want to do this? But it's those, you have to push through them kind of moments and kind of keep going, I would say. But yeah, 100%. Everyone has their moments in any walk of life. But then it comes down to the ultimate test, which is probably the first point you put on there in terms of how much you want it and what you're actually striving
Yeah,
for, like
yeah,
the longer term goal.
I get that, and definitely, God, the first time I stepped into a dressing room as a performance analyst intern, players basically saying, "Who the hell are you? And what are you doing in here?" Um, that was definitely a baptism of fire. Rejections for jobs, and it's really disheartening when you get to the final two or final stage of a job and you don't get it for seemingly no reason. Generally, it can just be a vibe or an impression, or just someone has a little bit more experience. And it's yeah, the industry is tough, and when we're not gonna hide that. But it's just about being consistent, taking the right action, and coming back to the reason why you're doing these actions in the first place, and realizing your ultimate goal. So that's my advice for that. Jake asks, how would you guys start a portfolio on LinkedIn? He says specifically to become a performance analyst, but I think the question is valid across scouting, recruitment analysis as well. I guess from my side, I always say the reason we're building this online portfolio is to showcase that we have the knowledge, technical skills, and understanding of the kind of roles that we want in football. So, for your case as a performance analyst, I would advise you to go and look for two or three different job adverts for a performance analyst based that you find interesting. What are the three, four, five, six common themes that come out on all of these job adverts in terms of skill sets, qualifications, knowledge, communication, whatever those things are? And they're the things that we want to be showing on our online portfolio. So, performance analyst, you're looking at tagging, clipping games, pre-match, post-match presentations, tactical analysis, communication, and that's what I would be wanting to see evidenced on your online portfolio over time. Chris, anything else to add to that one?
Yeah, I think that I say that a lot actually in terms of just look at, even if you're not ready for the role right now, you can still look at all the job descriptions for the roles that are currently live, and kind of that helps you forge a plan of the skills you need to learn, but also what you need to then start applying with your portfolio. I think when you apply for a job, it literally tells you what they want, so and you can demonstrate that in the form of the CV, your cover letter, and your portfolio of work, which you can take with you to an interview, for example. So you are well equipped to say, look, everything you want, everything you're looking for, I can demonstrate here that I can do all of that. So yeah, definitely like think about what you're putting out and does that tie into the role that you want. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
you
that's
answered it
great.
perfectly.
I'm glad you agree with that. So there's quite a few final questions before we wrap up. But one thing that I want to go on to is around if you want more support to make this career switch and journey happen, and I specifically help people who want to become recruitment analysts and scouts. If you want that network of people that are going to help you on your journey of football for getting access to one-to-one mentorship, meeting industry experts, feedback on your work, and as we said, that community, but also access to the right tools, data sources, and resources for you. Then I would seriously invite you to come and take a look at the recruitment room. That's exactly what we do with people. We've got 45 members globally. And at the moment, for people who are attending this live event, we have got an exclusive offer for you. This 10 space is only available, and it's only available for the next 3 hours. Head over to my LinkedIn profile and or straight through the link, which I'll pin both of them in the chat. But basically, over there we've got a special offer for you to take a look at. It's $200 off your first year of annual membership, and we would love to have you on board the the recruitment room if you're sort of serious and want to make progress on that journey in football. So yeah, head over to my LinkedIn. You'll see it in my header. You'll see it in my featured section. And yeah, there's a special offer there for you guys for attending. And I think this has been a really great session, Chris. I really appreciate a lot of sort of what you are are about, what you've done with your podcast, what you have done with everything you've done really in your career, and even the software and the things sort of you're building. So a huge thank you to you and what you're doing on your journey. I guess, is there any final piece of advice before we get wrapped up for you, from you to the people that are still here?
No, I think what I will say is if there's any more other questions on the back of this, I know people can watch this after the fact as well, so feel free. I know I'm connected with a lot of you guys already, but if we're not already connected, then definitely send a connection request. If you have any questions, my DMs are always open. If you have any, thing you want to ask more direct rather than, on the actual stream itself. But other than that, if you're interested in video analysis, then I do post about that, and obviously the podcast covers that and working in sport, etc. So be sure to check that out and sub to that if that is your bag. But other than that, I want to thank you as well, Liam, for organising this. Thanks for everyone that tuned in. I've enjoyed it. Both been our first LinkedIn Live, which went without hiccups. So
Yeah, I'm glad
yeah, it was good.
I'm glad it's gone well. If you've got any further questions, again, we're here to support. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, drop me a message. Again, the recruitment room's here. We've got a special offer. Next 3 hours, there's 10 spaces only, $200 off your first year, and we'll help you get that one-to-one support and mentorship. If you've liked this session and you want more of that, that's exactly what myself and the mentors can do and help with. But thanks a lot for coming along. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the next one that we get the opportunity to do and host. So thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers, guys.